She told me if you truly cared for me, you'd back this loan for my ex. He's trying to rebuild his life. I chuckled. She didn't find it funny. But when she arrived at the bank with him, the paperwork waiting on the table flipped her world upside down. Every relationship has that one outsider who seems to be rooting for it to collapse. For me, that outsider was my girlfriend's former boyfriend, Kyle. He wasn't so much a person as a living, breathing, poor decision. Yet for some reason, my girlfriend Mia saw him as a hidden gem. For 4 years, I thought Mia and I were crafting something durable. We shared my apartment, which I'd purchased with my first real earnings. We were partners, or so I assumed. She was a marketing director, sharp and magnetic, and we were aligned on our goals. We had a shared savings account for a future home. We discussed marriage, children. The plan was solid. I wasn't supporting her financially. We were moving forward together. But every investment portfolio has that one volatile, low-value stock you keep for emotional reasons. Mia's was Kyle. He was a walking, talking warning sign. A man in his early 30s who hadn't outgrown his college-era dreams of coasting through life with minimal effort. He called himself a serial innovator, meaning he came up with a new, groundbreaking idea every few months, none of which ever progressed beyond a poorly designed logo and a plea for startup cash from friends and family. He was charismatic in a greasy car salesman way and carried an air of perpetual victimhood. The world was always out to get him. The timing was never perfect. The investors just couldn't grasp his brilliance. Mia's history with him was a constant, subtle strain in our relationship. She had an overwhelming urge to rescue Kyle. They'd been together for years before me, and she still viewed him as a misunderstood genius. Only she truly understood him. She was his lifeline, his advocate, and as I'd soon learn, his unofficial financier. He just needs one real chance, she'd say after another of his grand plans fizzled, leaving him short on rent. He's not like you, Jake. He doesn't have your security. He's a dreamer. I'd nod and hold my tongue. I'm not a possessive guy. I'm a risk analyst by profession. I handle finances for a living. And Kyle was the most reckless bet I'd ever encountered. But I loved Mia, and I trusted her instincts, even when my gut was screaming warnings. The issue reached a boiling point last month. Kyle, it seemed, had devised his ultimate plan. A high-end, organic, farm-fresh food truck. Naturally, it was going to transform the food industry. He had the name. He had the logo. He had a vague notion of selling pricey burritos. All he needed was a $100,000 loan to buy the truck and launch. Unsurprisingly, every bank in town had dismissed him. His credit was a disaster. He had no collateral, and his business plan was likely scribbled on a scrap of paper. So he turned to his fallback. He turned to Mia, and Mia turned to me. She sat me down on the sofa, her face a picture of earnest concern. She explained Kyle's vision, how this was his big break. Then she made her request. He just needs a cosigner, Jake, she said, her eyes wide and imploring, just to get him started. The bank said with a solid cosigner, the loan's a done deal. I waited for the catch. There wasn't one. You want me, I said carefully, to guarantee a $100,000 loan for your ex, a guy who's never managed anything successfully. Her expression stiffened. The pleading look vanished, replaced by icy disappointment. I knew you wouldn't get it, she said. This isn't about you. It's about supporting someone who's struggling. It's about compassion. Then she played her trump card. She took my hand. If you truly loved me, she said, her voice a low, grave murmur. You'd do this. You'd back this loan for my ex. He needs a fresh start. It's a test of your devotion to me, to what matters to me. I stared at her. A test. She was asking me to take on a financial risk that could devastate me. A request to bankroll the fantasy of a proven loser. And she was framing it as proof of my love. I did something she didn't anticipate. I laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was a laugh of sheer, stunned disbelief. The kind you let out when a client says they want to sink their entire pension into a startup selling low-calorie water for dogs. It was the laugh of a professional faced with the worst investment pitch of his career. She didn't laugh. Her face froze with fury. I'm serious, Jake. I know, I said, my laughter fading, replaced by a calm, professional tone. And that's what's so alarming. I saw the fight coming. The tears, the accusations of being heartless. I didn't want that fight. You don't argue with a bad investment. You just walk away. And I suddenly saw a way to do it cleanly, decisively, and in a way that would deliver a sharp, necessary reality check. Fine, I said, my voice shifting to one of calculated consideration. I'll do it. Her angry look melted into stunned, victorious relief. Really? I will, I said, with one condition. I don't sign anything without my own review. That's how I work. All three of us, you, me, and Kyle, will go to my bank. We'll meet with my personal banker, Karen, who's managed my accounts for a decade. We'll show her Kyle's business plan and we'll go over the figures. If she says it's a sound investment and the risk is reasonable, I'll sign the papers right there. She was overjoyed. She hugged me, calling me the greatest man alive. She saw this as a small hurdle, a formality to get what she wanted. She didn't realize I wasn't agreeing to a loan. I was orchestrating a complete overhaul of our relationship. She called Kyle right away, her voice brimming with excitement. He was elated, naturally. They were a duo, celebrating their triumph over the dull, practical guy who'd finally come around. They thought they'd secured their funding. They had no clue they were about to face a financial reckoning. The week before the bank meeting was a display of overconfidence. Mia was radiant, treating me with a kind of patronizing warmth. She was the dreamer who tamed her rigid, narrow-minded partner. Kyle was even more insufferable. He called me for the first time ever to express gratitude. "Hey man, I really appreciate you stepping up," he said, his tone dripping with fake sincerity. "Mia always said you were a decent guy at heart. Guess you just needed a nudge to see the bigger vision. I just said I was eager to review his business plan. I spent that week preparing. I didn't need to dig deep on Kyle. His track record was a public archive of flops. But I dove into my own finances, focusing on the slow, steady leak that had been occurring for 2 years. Mia was clever. She never asked for large sums. It was always small requests. "Can you cover my car payment this month? I'm a bit tight. My card's maxed out. Can you handle these groceries? Kyle needs $500 to fix his car. I'll pay you back soon." She never did, of course. I'd let it slide because I loved her and could afford it. I'd chalked it up to the minor costs of a long-term partnership. Now I reframed it. It wasn't a cost. It was a liability. I combed through 2 years of bank records and credit card statements. I cataloged every dollar that had flowed from my accounts to hers or to cover her expenses beyond our agreed 50-50 split on household costs. Every car payment, every student loan she'd forgotten, every PayPal request I'd covered. I also traced every cash withdrawal from our joint account, cross-referencing them with texts where she mentioned helping Kyle. The total was staggering, even to me. Over 2 years, she'd siphoned nearly $20,000 of my money into her own life, and into the void that was Kyle. I compiled it all into a single, clear, and utterly incriminating spreadsheet. Then I had my attorney prepare 2 documents. The first was a formal loan contract, converting the $20,000 into a legally enforceable debt from Mia to me, with standard interest, due in full upon the end of our domestic partnership. The second was the termination of our domestic partnership. The day of the meeting arrived. I met Mia and Kyle in the bank's lobby. They radiated smug assurance. Kyle wore a new suit, likely bought with the last of Mia's credit. He carried a slim folder, presumably his business plan. Mia squeezed my hand. "You're doing something amazing, Jake," she whispered. We were ushered into a sleek, glass-walled meeting room. My banker, Karen, was waiting. Karen, in her 60s, has a no-frills demeanor and a knack for spotting dubious financial moves from a mile away. I'd briefed her the day before. She wasn't just my banker today. She was my ally. We sat down. Kyle, with a dramatic gesture, slid his folder across the table to Karen. "I think you'll find this a thrilling prospect," he said. Karen didn't even glance at it. She pushed it aside. "We'll get to that," she said, her tone sharp. "First, we need to address a prior financial issue. My primary duty is to my client, Mr. Carter. Before I can advise him on taking on a major new liability, like co-signing a $100,000 high-risk loan, we must resolve his current financial exposures." She turned to me. "Jake, you have the documents." I placed a thick, neatly bound folder on the table. I handed one copy to Mia and another to Kyle. "What's this?" Mia asked, her smile wavering. "That," I said, "is our due diligence." "Open it." She flipped it open. The first page was the spreadsheet, $20,000 of her actions laid out in stark detail with dates, amounts, and purposes. I watched her face as she scanned it, the color draining away. Kyle leaned over, his smug look turning to confused irritation. "What is this?" "This is personal." "No," I said, "it's my financial record and it's why we're here. Before I can co-sign a loan for you, Kyle, I need to ensure my own finances are secure. And it appears there's a significant, unsecured debt on my ledger. A $20,000 loan I've effectively given to my partner, who's been funneling it to you." I turned to Mia. "The second document is a repayment contract. It formalizes the debt you owe me. I need your signature." She stared at me, speechless, her mouth moving but no sound emerging. And the final document, I said, is a termination of our domestic partnership. It details the terms of our separation, including a timeline for you to leave my property and a final tally of our shared assets, which, as you know, are minimal since I've covered most of our expenses. I leaned back. Here's the deal. I can't, in good faith, take on new financial risk while my current partnership is such a poor investment. So this is what's happening. You, Mia, will sign the repayment contract for the $20,000 you owe me. You'll also sign the termination agreement ending our relationship. Once those are signed and notarized, yes, Karen is a notary, we can discuss next steps. I turned to Kyle. And you, Kyle, once Mia is no longer my financial responsibility, and once she has a legally binding debt to me that will appear on her credit report, I'm sure Karen will gladly review your business plan and evaluate your loan application on its own merits, with Mia as your potential co-signer. The trap was set. The room fell silent. Mia stared at the documents, her hands trembling. She looked at me, her eyes filled with dawning horror. She'd come here expecting to secure a future for her ex. Instead, she was handed a bill for her past and an eviction from her present. Kyle looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He glared at Mia, not with affection or concern, but with the raw, panicked fury of a leech whose host had just been isolated. "You can't do this," Mia whispered, tears forming. Karen spoke up, her voice dry as parchment. "Actually, he can. These documents are entirely legal. Do you have a pen, or should I provide one?" The fallout was as chaotic and gratifying as I'd expected. Mia initially refused to sign. She and Kyle stormed out of the bank, but reality hit fast. She had no legal ground to stand on. The evidence was in my bank records. My attorney sent a follow-up letter stating that if she didn't sign, I'd pursue the matter in civil court, a process that would be far more public and costly for her. A week later, signed and notarized documents arrived at my office by courier. She had to move out, naturally. She's now staying with her parents. The $20,000 debt is a formal judgment against her. It's wrecked her credit. She'll be repaying me in small, court-ordered payments for years. Each payment is a reminder of her choices. Her relationship with Kyle collapsed. The moment he realized she was no longer a cash source but a liability, his interest in her evaporated. He's now, for the first time, entirely on his own. His organic food truck will have to wait. I didn't do this to be vicious. I did it because it was the only rational move. She presented me with a terrible investment, a deal with all risk and no return. So I did what any smart financial planner would do. I minimized my losses, protected my assets, and exited a partnership doomed to fail. She wanted me to back a loan to help him rebuild. Instead, I made her sign a loan that's forcing her to do the same. And that's what I call a solid return on investment.